Dear students, I am Professor Vibhuti Patel, Head of Economics Department of SNDT Women's University in Mumbai. Today we are going to discuss our paper 4, that is Women and Economics, and module 7, which is on feminist economics. Feminism, as you know, is a collective or individual endeavor of women or those who are concerned about women's betterment, and this can happen in a variety of ways, including using your economic tools and economic measures. Now, feminist economics, why are we focusing on special concern with the feminism? We all know that feminism means individual or collective endeavor of women for bringing better condition, better status of women. And feminist economics, as economists, we use knowledge of economics from the point of view of women, from the point of view of gender relations, power relations between men and women, and how they impact family, household, community and society at large. Important objectives of feminist economics are to facilitate the process of understanding, analyzing, critically reflecting on how economic development, economic growth in various sectors, whether it is agriculture or industry or service sector, impacts men and women differentially because of the different predicaments that both men and women face. It also helps us to examine the reasons for subordination of women in our economy and in the society. It empowers women to attain the gender justice and also effective role that they can play in the decision making process and governance structures of our country. It also helps to evolve development alternatives with women, which are the existing patterns of development, where are women in the pyramid of the economy, and how do we create a development alternative which gives better deal or better share of pie to women in the cake of development. Feminist economics also helps to identify and understand the roots of inequality existing in our society based on caste, class, race, gender and religion, and how once we understand the roots of inequality, we can also come out with the measures to deal with this inequality and bring an egalitarian society based on principle of equity and justice. Feminist economics also supports social action aided by information, data, various types of indicators that we have, and it promotes development, peace, education, health and overall empowerment of women. The important concept is the difference between sex and gender. Sex is a biological difference between man and women, while the gender is a social construct, the kind of social values, code of conduct, do's and don'ts, what is good for man and what is good for women, how should girl behave, how should be the good boy, this kind of differences that we give right from the birth till the end. So, from womb to tomb, in whole life cycle of man and women, they are given different attributes, social values, that is very, very important. A feminist scholar, Simone de Beauvoir, said woman is not born, she is made. So, this is what signifies what is the role. Another very important concept we have in feminist economics is oppression versus exploitation. Anything which is an economic connotation has exploitation, while any form of injustice, degradation, subjugation, subordination is called oppression. Third very crucial concept in feminist economics is socialization. What kind of values, what kind of code of conduct, what kind of do's and don'ts our family gives us or society or kinship relation, media, education institution, they all play very important role in socialization. Social construction is also a very important analytical category in feminist economics, because this kind of a social construction that is given by the patriarchal value system through media, family, religion, state, legislative policies, they define what kind of autonomy versus control that we will face in our life. And this is not God given. We have created it, human society has created it. So, we can also deconstruct and reconstruction becomes a very important tool to understand unequal power relationship, and then we can reconstruct new power relations based on equality and justice. Other very important concepts in feminist economics are matriarchy. Matriarchy is a system of organization of society which is based on female principle, where the laws of inheritance and the lineage are from mother to daughter. Property rights are from mother to daughter. Matriarchy is also consistent and has a very important element called matrilineal, where the lineage is through mother to daughter, but it is consistent with patriarchy. So, you can have a patriarchal system where you can have a property rights from mother to daughter, but where the overall control over decision making is by the mama, by the maternal uncle. So, that is also we see several societies, matrilineal societies that we have had in our country, in Kerala and northeastern states. Another central concept in feminist economics is the concept of patriarchy. Patriarchy is a value system that controls women's sexuality, fertility and labor. This patriarchy has 5 important pillars to perpetuate the system. First, patriarchy is a very, very old value system. We have had a history of 5,000 years in this civilization. It's an extremely adaptive institution. Under any political structure, it adapts itself very, very clearly. Very important concern we have in feminist economics is gender mainstreaming. That we start with the premise that women are at the margin. All the marginalized groups, women have so many things to share with marginalized ethnic communities, marginalized religious communities, marginalized racial communities, and through use of this knowledge of feminist economics, we can mainstream women's concerns. Women's concerns, women's needs, women's aspirations, women's dreams, women's demands, which are now invisibilized, we bring them, first of all, we visibilize them, we bring them on the center stage and the political agenda, and then mainstream their concerns. One example can be of a gender audit of budgets. Like earlier budgets were totally not indifferent towards women's concerns. Since 2001 women empowerment policy, we have mainstreamed women's concerns within the budgetary discussions. Other crucial concepts we have in feminist economics are equality and equity. Equality is a similar treatment, similar attitude towards men and women, while the equity is creating an ambience, creating a situation so that equality can be attained. If we want men and women in our country to have an equal level of education, then you have to create a level playing field for girls and boys. Boys, so many things which boys get automatically, girls don't get. That is, parents would not send daughter to other village to study because of the question of security. Then what kind of affirmative action we take? That action is called equity. So, equity is very important to create a level playing field between boy and girl and between man and women. In feminist economics, our important analytical tool is gender analysis. Now, gender is a social construct. We have to do the kind of gender relations that are existing in our society. In every sector of the economy, we have to examine them. The political structures, what kind of gender relations are promoted. For example, you ensure 50% reservation for women in local self-government bodies. Immediately the ecosystem will stand. Suddenly you will have in panchayat 50% members who are women, and the kind of talk, kind of concerns, kind of priorities that women have are very different. Man would say that we want water in the village for agriculture, for industry. Women would say we want water in the village for potable drinking water, for the domestic purpose. Men would say we want technology like a tube well, which would easily make agriculture, the irrigation problem will be solved. Women would say we want technology like a gobar gas, which would give us a safe energy. So, this kind of gender relations, they are very important and they are determined by the socio-political, cultural, educational reality. So gender sensitivity and gender awareness can be cultivated by conscious effort of training and mentoring citizens, boys and girls. And it has to be, once the gender sensitivity comes, the way you look at the reality from the prism of how it's going to impact men and women differentially, and it's very, very important to bring any change in the society. Gender equity provides a level playing field to men and women so that they can have a fair chance of self-development and equal kind of outcomes, because if you invest in education for both men and women in Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, but girls are just not allowed by parents to go to school, then in spite of creating a school infrastructure and allocating money, you won't achieve anything. So gender sensitivity becomes very important, making parents aware that why it is important, and we can also finding a solution that instead of sending an individual girl, you send a cluster of girls so that they feel safe. So many states have created cycle scheme that girls can go in a cycle, all of them can travel together to the next village where they have high school. Another very, very important concern we have in feminist economics is a women empowerment. We all know how the process, the word terminology empowerment was evolved in the 70s. Ivan Illich and Paulo Freire, two Latin American teachers who coined this term empowerment, is about understanding and realization about subordination status, that why are we subordinate? What are the roots of injustice or subordination or subjugation that we are facing? And once we identify the roots, we also collectively arrive at a situation to create alternative, to fight against this subordination, make a conscious effort to change the reality, and this whole process is called empowerment. Another very important category that we have in gender economics is about gender roles, that are gender roles given to us by nature, that a woman has to be a homemaker and man have to be the breadwinner. No, these are created, socially constructed, and these gender roles differ in different societies, different countries. At a different stage of history, you have a different role. In feminist economics, we focus on gender based division of labor. Like in all existing societies, you have a gender based division of labor based on age, based on kind of economic activity. So if you are in the agricultural activity, where household subsistence sector, where household is the main center of economic activity, children would be, say, grazing the animals, or elderly people would be sitting and cutting vegetables, or young able-bodied man would do the agricultural task, women would be doing, say, other agriculture related work. So this kind of a division of labor has always existed in most of the economic society, most of the societies, and that gender based division of labor changes according to the needs of the society. For example, at the time of war, First and Second World War, when men were at the frontier, most of the young able-bodied men were fighting the war. It was women who managed the economy. So immediately the dress code changed. Instead of a long Victorian robe, women started wearing jeans and shirt with so many pockets, so that in one pocket you have your sandwiches, other pocket you have your tools, third pocket you have your baby's bottle, where your baby is stuck in the snuggly, either at the back or in the front. So at that time, women were in all sectors of the economy, right from engine driver to pilot to working in the manufacturing sector. When the war ended and so many human beings were killed, we had a baby boom. After every war, we have a baby boom, and the new kind of gender division of labor started, and the Mills and Boons stories became very popular, that women have to be the homemaker, they have to look after the babies, and men have to be the breadwinner. Once you have industrialization and then male wages increase, we have agricultural mechanization, you have a blue revolution, you have a white revolution, you have a high yielding variety, green revolution, and in those areas where this kind of revolutions have taken place, women's work participation have reduced. So Haryana and Punjab are the classic example. It is not that women in Haryana and Punjab don't do any economic work, they do supervisory work, but women have been replaced by agricultural technologies. And then you have a third stage of this U-shaped curve phenomena, where these women who have been pulled out of economy because of mechanization, industrialization, automation, their daughters who are going to school, they are highly educated and they enter into service sector. So currently India is boasting of upward curve of service sector. If proper intake of food, nurturance, care is given, then women are as productive as men. But their biological role of like that monthly menstruation and procreation, that also confines women for some time, and that also becomes the reason for gender based division of labor. But say several myths about the gender based division, that women can't touch the tools. So the whole thing about that women have to do nurturer's role and men have to manage science and technology. So that kind of prejudices also come because of this kind of understanding about the biological work that women have to do. Now, in the process of economic development, how has gender played very important role? And here in the pre-industrial society, the women had a central role in a household based production, whether it is of cooking, cleaning and caring, or collection of fuel, firewood, animal husbandry, women played a very important role. In subsistence agriculture also, when man's main concern in our cultural context, where the man would be the ploughing and they would do the sowing, remaining tasks of agrarian activities were left to women. And now we talk about the feminization of agriculture. With industrialization, increasing number of able-bodied men started migrating to the cities, because you need cash economy, you have to deal with the cash economy, men have to earn in cash. And that's why we saw that right from the colonial times, we have seen this whole flow of rural man coming to the urban cities to earn cash, while women would manage the agriculture. So that is one thing. Industrialization also brought several women in several sectors like jute, textile industry, even in mine, women played a very important role in the colonial times. Like India showed nearly 33% work participation rate of women in the workforce as main workers. It slowed down after independence. In 1971, we had only 11% women as main workers. Main workers are those who are working for 186 days in a year for 8 hours a day. So we would see that, but whole army of unpaid family workers. Who are these unpaid family workers? Who are helping the household production, whether it is in cottage industry or in agriculture or in the household based production. They are making contribution, but the owner of the whole business is a male head of the household. So though women are contributing, children are contributing, but they remain invisible labor. So this invisibility of women's work also results into non-recognition, that you don't treat women as workers, you just see them only as basically the dependent. So even in our official data system earlier, they were declared as dependent on the male breadwinner, which is not the reality. So gender economics has focused on, and the feminist economics has also highlighted this kind of invisible, unrecognized, undervalued work of women. And now United Nations INSTRAW, a statistical wing of United Nations, and even NIPFP in our country, National Institute of Public Finance and Policy Making, has acknowledged that, and they have also said that when women enter the mainstream economy, they are already exhausted because of cooking, cleaning, caring, and also lot of economic activities which augment family resources. If women did not bring water, then you would have to purchase water. If women did not collect firewood, then you would have to purchase firewood. If women did not bring fodder for the animals, then you would have to buy it from the market. So these are the activities which are non-monetized, which women are doing, but they are not recognized as work, and that needs to be knitted into the actual work. women end up doing the least skilled work, monotonous work, extremely backbreaking work in an unorganized sector, because if you go by Arjun Sen Gupta committee report, like 80% of the unorganized workers in our country, they happen to be women, and they manage with 20 rupees per day. So that is the reality. That means they are low paid, they are working without any labor standards, there is no concern for their occupational health and safety, and they are not even rewarded adequately. This whole legitimacy to feminist economics came with a seminal contribution made by Professor Esther Boserup in the early 70s, Women in Economic Growth. Esther Boserup was an anthropologist who wanted to understand African manhood, why African man had so many wives and so many children. She wanted to understand, was there anything special about African masculinity that African man was polygamous and they had so many children. She, as an anthropologist, decided to live with the people, African people, and she was very different from the colonial anthropologist. We all know that anthropology's roots are in the colonization. She did not just observe the people, subalterns, from the top of the wing of the bungalow, but she stayed with them. She examined the labor processes and labor relations in Africa. She came up with 3 important findings. One, that Africa had lot of wild animals. They did not have domestic animals. So there were no cows or donkeys or buffaloes or horses which they could use for production. One. Number 2, in Africa, tribal values were very prominent, and that's why there was not much differentiation in socialization between boy and girl and between man and women. That's why African children, whether you are a girl or a boy, did not face differential treatment in terms of food, in terms of care, in terms of nurturance. Boy and girl were given the same amount of food, and that's why you did not see much physiological difference between African man and African woman. African woman would be broad shouldered, she would be tall, she would be able to do as arduous tasks as the African man could do. This is a second very important finding she found out. And third finding, she said that because of 500 years of slavery, most of the healthy men were sold off as slaves. So Africa, and they had to build the colonies, 65 colonies, and the whole empire had to be built by these slaves in Fiji Islands, in Caribbean, in Asia, in Latin America, in Africa, in this thing. And that's why it was the women who were the mainstay for food security. It was the women who provided food security to Africa. So women's role in the agriculture is very important. So the 3 important revelations of Towards Equality report were declining sex ratio, continuously declining sex ratio in the history of census of India from 1891 to 1971. Report came out in 74. And second one was the declining work participation of women. That did not mean that women did not work in India. Women worked in agriculture and mines and in everywhere, in homes and in household production, but they were not rewarded in terms of wages and salary. Third one was the extremely high rate of maternal mortality and child mortality, which could not be explained only by poverty, because we have countries poorer than India and women have a better chances of life, like sub-Saharan African countries where you have a massive desert, there is a tremendous food insecurity, very scanty rain. Even in those countries, women had a better survival chances than Indian women. At the time it was a 480 women, the mortality rate was very high, and you have to examine how Indian patriarchy is operating, what kind of taboos that we have, why you have 85% Indian women are anemic. And anemia is not only poor person's disease, even in the middle class and upper class you come out with anemic women, and this is because women eat last, least and leftover. That is cultural. Okay, if in a society where men and women are given food at the same time, in the same proportion and same quality of food, then women will not have this kind of health problems. So, nutrition becomes a very important concern. So, with this towards equality report, so many ramifications took place. Economists, sociologists, anthropologists, political scientists, decision makers, all of them started focusing on women's concern. Earlier there was a complacency that in the post independence India, Indian women had no problem. First of all, India had so many, India has a goddess worshipping culture. Indian women in the post independence period have enjoyed constitutional equality and they have a very good status, but the towards equality report shattered this myth, and in 1975 India also signed the charter, UN charter on equality, development and peace. When we talked about the equality, it is not only constitutional guarantee which article 14, 15 and 16 ensure, but also the equality in each and every sector of the economy, and for that special measures, special schemes and programs had to be evolved. Planning Commission decided to have a separate chapter. Earlier women's concerns were reflected in social welfare, chapter on social welfare, or with the physically challenged or socially backward communities. Now, because of this whole thing about women in development, that women play a very important role in the course of development, we have a separate chapter called Women and Development. Development was defined as the earlier mainstream definition of development in economics has been modernization, industrialization, mechanization, automation, green revolution, white revolution. From that we say that when we talk about women in development, the development indicators of development would be employment, health and education. So, Planning Commission also from 1975 we see a shift, it is called paradigm shift in understanding of development. Human development approach was adopted, and this kind of investment in human development is not a charity, but it is a fundamental necessity of growth of the country. That realization also came. 6th 5-year plan onward, we see that the attitude of the planners, policy makers started changing. Towards equality report also recommended that more financial allocation had to be given. Government of India came up with a Women and Child Development Department within Ministry of Human Development, Human Resource Development, and later on by 2006 we had a separate Ministry of Women and Development of our country, and so many other important ramifications also we had. Now, in feminist economics we are dealing with the market. Okay, market is segmented, whether it is a product market or labor market or factor market, you have a differential stakes form of man and women. What kind of entitlements man get in the product market or a labor market or a factor market are very different from women, and that is why we have to accept that market is differential, market is segmented, it is layered, and that there also we need affirmative action for empowerment of women, so that they can negotiate the markets which are very harsh, because markets can be extremely harsh, because you have a goat and tiger operating in the same market. Okay, so tiger's interest is to eat up the goat, and goat's interest is to save herself and protect herself. So we can't just have laissez-faire. If you just say free for all kind of a situation, then women are not going to get anything. So, feminist economics talks about affirmative action, supportive system, legislative protective legislation, special measures, special budgetary allocation, special reservation policies for women, so that they can get better equipped to deal with the market, whether it is a Skill India mission or whether it is a educational this thing, because most of the time we see women getting segregated into arts and commerce. When it comes to professional courses, and most of the professional courses are also, they charge heavy fees, they are also privatized. So, in that women are not found much. Parents do not invest in daughters, because daughters are treated as a pariah then, or it is someone else's property, and they would say that what educating, investing in daughters' education is equated with watering neighbor's plant. Okay, that is also the understanding, and that's why the state has to pitch in. What parents are not doing, state has to pitch in, and that's why several state governments give free education to girls from UG to PG. Okay, in universities like ours, SNDT Women's Universities, get created and supported because of this kind of a special needs that we have. Another efforts, these are the efforts made by the state, but it is not only the state which is doing all this kind of affirmative action, but you also have a people's organization, citizens group, women's studies center, and development oriented organization, women's networks, which are existing locally, nationally, regionally and internationally, who are also striving to give a alternative perspective. And that alternative perspective called DAWN, Development Alternative with Women Network, that is also very important. So, initiative from top and pressure from below, they have played very important role in changing economic governance. Neoclassical approach is critiqued by feminist economics, and institutional approach is supported because institutional approach takes into consideration complex socio-political cultural reality and the differentiation based on caste, class, race, ethnicity, religion and gender. Thank you.